Hey there, and welcome. So, if you've ever wanted to really get a handle on the language that powers business decisions in IBM's Operational Decision Manager, you are in exactly the right place. We're about to kick off our deep dive explainer on the ILOG rule language, or IRL. Let's just jump right in. Just think about it for a second. How do you take a simple business policy, something like gold members get a 15% discount, and actually turn that into code? Code that a system can run, reliably thousands of times a day without a hitch? Well, that is the exact problem a business rule language was made to solve. And yeah, that's where IRL comes into the picture. But before we start hammering through the glossary of keywords, we've got to answer the big question first. What is IRL anyway? Okay, so IRL, the ILOG rule language, is basically the bedrock. It's a programming language with its own unique keywords and syntax, and its entire purpose is to let you write, manage, and execute business rules with absolute precision. Think of it as the technical blueprint for automating your business logic. All right, now that we've got the what out of the way, let's get to the good stuff, the keywords themselves. We're going to do this in a kind of rapid-fire glossary style. First up is our batch from after all the way to body. Let's do this. Kicking things off, we have after. This one is all about sequence and making sure things happen in the right order. In a rule flow, you might have multiple steps, while after is how you say, hey, don't you dare start this pricing task until the eligibility check is 100% done. It's a super simple but really powerful way to enforce a logical process. Next up, agenda filter. And this is where things get really cool and dynamic. Instead of just letting every possible rule run, an agenda filter lets you apply a custom filter while the code is running. This means you can decide right in the moment which rules should even be considered for firing. Why would you do this? It's a massive tool for boosting performance and precision, especially in really complex situations. So, you've got a situation where a bunch of rules are all screaming pick me at the same time. What do? That's exactly what the algorithm keyword is for. It sets the strategy for resolving those conflicts. Are you going to use depth first, where newer rules get priority? Or maybe something else? This keyword lets you control the exact firing order, which is absolutely critical for getting predictable results. Sometimes you don't need to get fancy. You don't need filters, you don't need complex logic, you just want to run everything. For that, you have all rules. When you pop this keyword inside a rule task, you're telling the rule engine, no questions asked, execute every single rule you have for this task. It's as straightforward as it gets. Let's be honest, code can get messy, and that's where the as keyword is a lifesaver. It just lets you create a temporary nickname or an alias for a variable to make things clearer. So in our example, instead of just a generic customer, if they're over 60, we can refer to them as senior cust inside that rule. It's a small thing that makes your code so much easier to understand down the line. All right, this one's easy. Before is, you guessed it, the exact opposite of after. It's just another way to define the sequence of your tasks. In this example, you're making dead sure that the validate task has to finish up before the process task can even think about starting. Okay, next up is a real chameleon of a keyword, body. Seriously, it's job changes depending on where you find it. First up, when you see it in a flow task, the body is where you put the script that defines the actual logic of the flow itself. The code that strings the different tasks together. Then, you'll see body pop up in an action task. And here, its job is totally different. The body now holds the actual Java code that gets executed. This is where you do stuff, like in the example, where you're directly changing an order's status to completed. And finally, the third place you'll find body is inside a rule task. Here, it lets you inject some Java code to run right when the task kicks off or right as it's finishing. It's perfect for things like logging or any other setup or cleanup you need to do. So yeah, one keyword, 3 really distinct jobs. Pretty neat, right? All right, great job. First batch is down. We are making some serious progress. Let's keep that momentum going and dive right into our next group of keywords, this time from break all the way to dynamic. First in this list is break. And if you've done any kind of programming before, you're probably not in your head right now. It's a control statement you use inside a loop. The moment a certain condition is met, like finding a faulty item in our example, break just terminates the loop completely and the program continues on from there. Tired of writing endless if-then-else statements? Well, that's what case is for. It's a key part of a switch statement, which is just a much cleaner way to handle logic with multiple branches.
You evaluate one variable, and then you have a specific case for each possible value, like our gold status, to run some code.
Okay, this one is absolutely essential for writing code that doesn't just fall apart. We're talking about catch. You use it in a try-catch block, and its whole job is to define what to do when something goes wrong, when an exception happens. This is what keeps one little error from crashing your entire rule execution. Now get ready, because this is one of the most powerful keywords in the rule engine world. It's collect. It lets you look through all your data, find every single object that matches a condition you set, and then scoop them all up into one group or collection. This is a game changer for writing rules that need to analyze groups of data, not just one thing at a time.
So we just talked about break, which gets you out of a loop completely. Continue is its little cousin. It doesn't end the whole loop. It just says, hey, we're done with this one iteration. So if an item should be ignored, continue just skips right to the next item in the list without running the rest of the code for the current one.
Here we go again with another 2-for-1 keyword, default. Its first job is inside a rule task. You can list out some specific high-priority rules you want to run first, and then you can use the default keyword as a catch-all. It just tells the engine, okay, now run every other rule you've got that I didn't already mention. And now for the version of default you've probably seen a million times, the one inside a switch statement. It's your fallback plan. If the variable you're checking doesn't match any of your specific case conditions, the code inside the default block is what gets executed. Simple as that.
And our last keyword for this section is dynamic. What if you don't know a value when you're writing the rule? What if it's going to change later during execution? That's what dynamic is all about. You use it to tell the rule engine, hey, this value isn't set in stone. It's going to be figured out on the fly. This is absolutely key for building flexible rules.
And that's a wrap for this round. Take a second, let that sink in. You just powered through 17 essential IRL keywords, from controlling flow with after to gathering data with collect. That's a fantastic start. But remember, with over 90 keywords in the language, we are just scratching the surface here. So, as we finish up here, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Based on what you've just seen, which one of these keywords immediately jumped out at you? Which one made you think of a business problem you could solve right now? Give it some thought. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you in part 2, where we'll tackle even more.